Hey gang, we're at Northfield Oakwood Cemetery in Northbrook, Illinois. Northbrook is a suburb northwest of Chicago. And we are here today to visit and pay respects at the grave of a 13-year-old girl who died a very, very tragic death back in 1903. It was the Iroquois Theatre fire, very infamous, tragic disaster. Actually, the Iroquois Theatre fire is the worst disaster of theater in the United States, still to this day. Ethel was her name, Ethel Blackman. She was one of over 600 people that lost their lives that tragic day. Mostly women and children, as they all were trying to get out. They were panicked. Well, we'll talk about it. I want to give a shout out to Gerry Lekas, who is one of our author friends. Gerry wrote the book Where the Tour Buses Don't Go. We've talked about him before because he's given us some great leads like this story today. So thanks, Gerry. So we'll go take a walk to Ethel's grave, the family. I'll tell you the story. As we walk, it's going to be a little noisy. Sorry, we're right next to a roadway, a 4-lane roadway that's practically a highway. So if I'm shouting at some points, that's why. But we'll muddle through it. We'll muddle through it. So let's bring ourselves back to the year 1898. And 1898, we're right next to Northbrook here, right nearby. There's a suburb called Glenview. And this is where the family would move to a few years before. Now, it was Gertrude and Harry Edward Blackman, the parents. They'd been married for 11 years. And they were very excited about their future. Of course, Harry had a great job. They had recently got this new house. It was 4 years earlier they had moved to the park area in Glenview. It was a 40-acre planned community. And they had four children. 2 boys, 2 girls. They were all part of Glenview's Lutheran Church. And living next door to the Blackmans were Gertrude's parents and her siblings. Everything was fantastic. For now. But then, sadly, tragedy would strike. It would strike first with the son, their oldest son, Harold Smeal Blackman. He was 7, and in November of 1902, he passed away. But as I said, this was not to be the only tragedy that would befall this family. The very next year was December of 1903, this horrible event I was talking about. That event that would crash down on this family. Now, it was December 30th was the day. Imagine December 30th of 1903, way out here in Glenview. And Gertrude's sister Florence said, "Hey, I want to take your kids downtown." There's Gladys, and there's Jeffrey, and of course Ethel. And Aunt Florence was going to take them to a show called Mr. Bluebird at the Iroquois Theatre. And so they took the train from here all the way downtown. It was a big event. Holidays were in full swing. Everything was festive. Well, it was not to be a festive day in Chicago for anyone. If you've heard of the fire, what happened was there was an arc light. Now, an arc light is the kind of a light that, these old lamps that had literally 2, how can I describe it? Imagine a giant bulb where there's one point coming in and then another point. It would form, where the electricity jumps, and it's a big arc. And they had big arc lamps like that. And one of those arc lamps would catch the curtains, touch the curtains, and erupt in flames. And you know, everything in those days, there was no fire retardant materials, so everything just started to burn. And not only that, the noxious fumes and black smoke, people didn't stand a chance. Now, the bigger problem was that the Iroquois Theatre had barred a lot of the doors closed for security, and we all know what happens. And the other thing, which was maybe just as big of a problem, if not more, was the few ways to get out. They were like funnels. And just imagine, I remember seeing a picture of one of the doorways where they were all trying to get out, and it all funneled down to this little, I think one of the doors was barred shut or something, but it was just a little opening, and everybody just crammed and jammed in there, kind of like a ship sinking. Everyone's going to that, almost like a portal, and just getting plugged. So that's why so many people perished. And it was horrendous. Imagine all those kids, all those moms, all those people. Well, Florence got out. And she got out with Gladys and Jeffrey. And how they lost Ethel is not known. But they made it to a fire escape. And they got down the fire escape and they went to Couch Avenue. And they huddled there and they're like, "Where's Ethel? Where's Ethel?" But you couldn't go back in there. It was mayhem. There was no way to go back in because everyone was coming out. So she was thinking, well, Ethel's 13. She's going to get out on her own. But it was not to be. It was not to be. They came back here to Glenview and they waited and they waited and they waited for some word about Ethel, but no word would come. Harry Blackman, her brother-in-law, and the children's father, was a freight manager at Marshall Fields, was just a few blocks away. They were thinking maybe she went there. So they went to look there, but for the next 7 hours or so, the family continued to wait. And then Gertrude's brother, William Schmiel, and Harry, father, started to search the hospitals and morgues for Ethel's body. By midnight, the morgues were closing their doors for a few hours to update victim lists and organize the bodies. And Harry and William, that is when they found Ethel, in those last few hours before the doors closed for the night. Now, what was unbelievable was, and it's the most unbelievable part of the story, back in those days, just imagine, he took his daughter, he wrapped her, Ethel, in his raincoat, and he brought her on the train all the way home, carrying her on his lap all the way home. Can you just imagine? Well, there was a problem because the permits did not allow for you to come here like this cemetery and just bury people, bury loved ones. You needed to have a permit. And there was a whole bureaucratic process you had to go through to get that permit. So what did they do? They ended up having to get 12 witnesses to come out on a train, officials, to come out here to the house and view her body, and then they got the proper, signatures and permit, and then they could come here and have the funeral and the burial of 13-year-old Ethel Blackman. And her grave is straight ahead right here. A lot of family members are here, and we'll take a look at all the graves. But this says, let's see here, I can try and put a flashlight on there. Let's see. I think you can read that. Ethel Blackman, September 9th, 1890, December 30th, that fateful day, 1903. Here is Harold. That's her brother, who I was talking about, passed away in 1902, the year before, November 14th it was. He was born February 6, 1895, it looks like. Here we have a grandson, James Leroy Blackman. That's 1926 to 1938. Died very young. And here are the parents. Gertrude Smeel Blackman, October 25th, 1863, December 22nd, 1944. And the father, Harry Edward, April 14th, 1864, January 25th, 1947. And here is, let's see, this is Gladys, one of the survivors of the fire, her sister, 1893 to 1978. Very sad what this family had to go through. Well, let's place a flower here for Ethel. Florence Smeel never married, but remained close to her Blackman niece and nephew, Gladys and Jeffrey. Jeffrey grew up and served as a private in World War I. He became a journalist and married Emily F. Gartner. The pair had 4 daughters and 1 son who lived to the age of 12. Gladys became a school teacher. And she did not marry, but she traveled to Europe and spent her retirement years in Florida. So rest in peace, Ethel, and rest in peace to the Blackman family.